So, hello everybody, this is Bhante Joe, and I'm just here at this rock in the kind of, this is just below this hill that I've climbed a couple times before, and thought to record a short Owada for the internet. So I thought that I could start with a little meditation, so I can lean forward a bit and arch the spine, and look about 3 feet in front, and close our eyes. And can focus in on the breath. Can know when it's coming in and know when it's going out. If we breathe in a long breath, can just know I'm breathing in a long breath. And if we breathe in a short breath, can just know I'm breathing in a short breath. And can let awareness spread until it fills the whole body. And one of the metaphors they give for spreading awareness throughout the body in the canon is like a lake with an underground source. And the water comes up from the underground source and fills the whole lake. In a similar way, one can let awareness spread until it fills one's whole body. And with awareness filling the whole body, one can practice whole body breathing. And when practicing whole body breathing, it can be helpful to change one's perception of the breath. So that it's not just air that one's pulling in and out of the lungs, but it's a kind of energy that's all around and coursing through the body. And it's possible to pull it into and out of every pore. Almost like the body was a big sponge. So on the in-breath, one can think whole body. On the out-breath, one can think whole body. And can open our eyes and do a short Awada for the internet. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Dhammaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Saṅghaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi. Tatiyampi Buddhaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Tatiyampi Dhammaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Tatiyampi Saṅghaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi. Tatiyampi Buddhaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Tatiyampi Dhammaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Tatiyampi Saṅghaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi. So I hope that everybody is having a great day. And this is a lovely area with a kind of large rock behind it, and have posted some kind of photos, videos of that rock. It's very beautiful. It seems like there's almost nothing there because there was the slope is relatively steep, and then the top of the rock is flat. Which one wouldn't expect. And there's this kind of very nice path which elephants have made. It's kind of in Sri Lanka. Elephants are very agile. They kind of go these places. One might go to the top of a hill or a mountain and think that it's probably going to be pretty empty or desolate up there, and there's elephant paths where elephants cross. And so from the Buddhist time up to the present time, going into the forest, staying in the forest, staying in places of quiet has been a duty, one of the duties that practicing monks are encouraged to observe. It's not a rule that one has to go to the forest, but it's highly encouraged by the Buddha, highly recommended by the Buddha. And it comes under what they call one of the Dhutanga observances. These Dhutanga observances are special ascetic practices, one of which is living in the forest. However, before the Buddha died as well, he gave a list of different things that would prevent the decline of the monastic order. There's 7, it's like different sets of 7 actually. And one of the things that prevents the decline of the monastic order is that monks are devoted to forest lodgings. They are devoted to living in the forests. And there's another sutta that makes the reasons for this even a little bit more explicit. It's because in the forest there's the environment is very conducive to meditation. It's very conducive to practice. So there's a sutta where the Buddha said, sometimes he sees a monk nodding in the forest, and he's happy because he thinks soon he'll wake up and devote himself to the wilderness perception and will attain concentration. And there's other times he sees a monk sitting in jhanas in the city, and he becomes unhappy because he thinks soon a novice or a monastery attendant will disturb that venerable one and break his concentration, rouse him from his concentration. So he's unhappy with that city dwelling. So it goes on, and it kind of it's kind of that story. That one starts and kind of continues. But basically the thrust behind it is that these forest environments are something which is very conducive to the practice of meditation, very conducive to the progress in meditation. Part of this is the energy in the forest itself. I remember when I was young, I used to go to these retreats at there was a Zen Buddhist temple. I used to go to retreats there quite a bit. But we have these kind of retreats, and outside there was a parking lot just outside what they called the sambong, which is the hall where people would meditate, and we'd all meditate there as a group. In the summer at a big retreat there might be 20, 25 people. And I found it was interesting because I'd never, I didn't grow up with meditation, but when you meditate with many people, there's this kind of energy in the room. There's almost like all these people meditating almost makes the room quiet, even if there's disturbances outside. It's an energy that kind of inclines the mind towards quiet, inclines the mind to go inwards. And I was living in the city, I felt that energy remembered that energy kind of on retreats. It's kind of, when retreats were there, it seemed to be, much more quiet. This kind of energy that would help one to focus inwards. And then remember, it was years later after I'd actually left the temple and got together with some friends, and we went on a camping trip up to the northern part of Algonquin Park, which is this very large park, national park in Ontario. And the northern part is remote. It's kind of more remote than the southern part. It's kind of, you have to go up to the top and then come in. And I remember going out to this kind of dock, and it was nighttime and nobody was around, and I did some meditation. And the feeling that I remember was, wow, this silence that's here is similar to the silence that I felt on this retreat. And yet I'm just alone. There's not 30 people meditating together. It's just the environment of the forest that's pushing the energy inwards. So monks go into places like this where it's conducive to meditate because they have a goal in mind. This goal is to find the end of suffering. This is their desire. This is what they go to forests for. This is why when one lives in a forest with that support, this kind of natural environment, it's there's animals and these kind of things, but one might say the energy in the environment is inward focusing. There's no billboards, no advertisements, not so much human noise that would pull one outwards. In the forest, what one tends to find as well is also dangers. It's kind of, the forest has always been a place where not only humans go, but also animals. So one finds the abodes of dangerous animals in the forest. The forest is the abode of tigers. The forest is the abode of bears. The forest is the abode of snakes. The forest is the abode of elephants. All these things live in the forest. And so for this reason, people will generally avoid, one of the reasons, going into forests. It's kind of, although it might be very beautiful, it also has its dangers. But for a monk who desires practice, who desires to train their mind, these dangers that are in the forest, they're actually things that are conducive to practice. I mean, one doesn't want to encounter tigers and lions and or whatever it might be. But there's a fear that comes up when one considers going into places where they might be, going there to practice. Obviously, one doesn't go, with the intention to meet them. So there's suttas there's a sutta where the Buddha instructs monks living in the forest and says, you should reflect on death. I could step on a snake, my food might disagree with me, one is living alone, and by that I could die. And so from this, one brings up this perception of death, which brings up, a perception of urgency. I don't know how much time I have left. I have to devote my time. And this perception of danger, it's a paradox in that it can also help to focus one's mind. Because when one goes into the forest without guns or knives, one's protection is one's practice. One's protection is one's morality. One's protection is one's concentration. One's protection is the sincerity of one's intentions. And in Buddhism, these things have a power. And kind of, at least anecdotally, in the stories of practicing monks, one hears about the monks from the Thai forest tradition, especially describing how they sometimes would encounter animals, but their mind would become concentrated and the animal would leave. And they felt nothing could harm them at that time. And not only that, the encounter helped them to focus in on their topic. When the environment is very quiet, when one feels a sense of danger, when one has the perception of death established in the mind, these are all things which act as kind of, safeguards, act as kind of turning points to bring the mind back inwards. They act as kind of pathways to direct the mind back towards itself. One is in a place where the energy is good. One is in a place where one relies on the Dhamma as one's lifeline. one is in a place where one contemplates that this could be my last day. And all of these things turn one's mind towards the Dhamma as a refuge, turn one's mind towards the urgency of finding Nibbana as a true refuge. So these are reasons that monks go into the forest, and the Buddha has always recommended, the Buddha recommends these reasons. There's kind of, one reads the Theragatha, some of the earliest wilderness poetry actually comes from Buddhist monks. It's kind of, I think I might have heard that might be the, oops, got an ant here, might be the earliest wilderness poetry on record. And kind of Mahakassapa, he's the monk who's most famed for ascetic practices. He goes through and he says, covered over with Indipagopa insects. I might be probably pronouncing that wrong, but these kind of, basically these forests give me delight, and kind of goes through, he has all these verses, and it's actually very beautiful kind of homage to the beauties of the forest, kind of talks about rushing streams and these different things kind of that give his mind delight. And so the Buddha says that these lonely places, these places where the world doesn't delight, that's the places where, in his time there were many arahants. In Thailand, in the modern era, there have been arahants. This is the place where arahants delight. They delight in places like this that the world shuns. And it's because these places in the forest, these are the places where it's conducive to practice. These are the places that turn one's mind towards Nibbana. So whatever the dangers there might be in the forest, whatever potential difficulties or hardships a monk might face in the forest, monks who practice often regard it as their duty to go. It's almost like if one was a policeman, then when one hears that there's a kind of robbery in progress, one hears there's a kind of, a kind of crime in progress, one's duty is to go and try to stop the crime. If one is a firefighter, one hears there's a fire, one's duty is to go to stop the fire. Or if there's a merchant ship, then the duty of that merchant ship is to go and set sail on the ocean. Even though criminals, fires, and oceans are all dangerous places, this is the duty of these types of professions. And in a similar way, it's the duty of a practicing monk to strive for Nibbana and to use the tools. So one of the things is that, I guess one might not say it's a duty, but it's encouraged to use whatever tools are at one's disposal to try to put an end to suffering. So for this reason, from the Buddha's day up to the modern era, monks will willingly go into the forest to try to find these places of quiet. And the Buddha says he doesn't recommend bonding with everything at all. He doesn't recommend bonding with nothing at all. He doesn't recommend bonding with monks and lay people, but he recommends bonding with places that are quiet, kind of serene, conducive for meditation, even though those places may not be places that the world loves. Even though those places may have their dangers, still one goes there for the sake of finding the goal. And this is the way it's been from the time of the Buddha up to the time of the present day. These places where the normal people don't delight, where the arahants do delight, these are places where one's mind can become fixed on the Dhamma. These are places where one can contemplate the mortality of one's nature. And these are places where one's mind can penetrate to try to find the truths, to try to find the insights that allow one to let go, allow one to relinquish the attachments in one's mind to the world that cause one to suffer. And this is the purpose of going to the forest.